that big if, because like I always go back to Nietzsche, who says, what doesn't kill me makes me stronger. But as I say, he's very specific about that. What doesn't kill him makes him stronger. But that isn't true for a lot of people. It makes us, tougher. I don't know if that's the same as stronger. In other words, it just kind of puts us in this world where we get battered around a lot and we manage to survive. But I don't know that strength is just surviving. Strength is probably measured by thriving. It's adapting and becoming better. It isn't just like holding your breath and taking the blows. It's actually being able to fight back and overcome. If you can take the suffering, if you can make it better, if you can make your life better through it, then yeah, because you have to be able to overcome. Because whatever great thing that you want to do in your life, you're having to battle against yourself, but you're also battling against other people, which means that there's going to be a back and forth. It's like if you're a football player and you want to be great and you're battling against somebody else on the field, they're going to hit you, you're going to hit them. You're not getting out of it unscathed. And even if you do hit them, it's still going to cost you. It's still going to hurt you a little bit probably, if not now, after the game. And so there's no getting out of that contest unscathed. There's no getting out of a football game unbruised. But you overcome the bruising better than the other person. You overcome it better than. You overcome the suffering better than them. A lot of times life is like that too. Who can get through the pain and suffering? Because you're going to experience it. But who's going to take it and make it into something useful? There's a word for it, adaptation. So you'd be able to adapt. So maybe that the reason that they become killers is because that's the field that they're in, and then you have to do it. So they're not necessarily demonstrating that they're killers, but they're demonstrating the ability to adapt and the willingness to do what's necessary. Because it isn't so far off in some businesses. I know we dogpile on companies sometimes, but there are companies, like corporations that do like they'll dump toxic stuff into rivers, or they'll dump stuff into the oceans, and they have to know that they're killing people. They're not actually out there pulling the trigger themselves, but they do know it's leading to death. And so I don't know that it would be so hard for them to translate over into the drug business. Just like I don't know if it would be difficult for drug smugglers to adapt to the chemical supply business. Probably not too far off. Okay. So then there's something there about suffering and adaptation, being able to take the suffering and use it in some way, positive. And then it begins with that word I smiled about earlier, if. If. That's a really big word for only 2 letters. It's funny, it came up yesterday in one of my 10th grade classes, that word if. Have you guys see the movie 300? You guys know about Spartans? Spartan warriors? Now, Spartans were kind of known for being, exactly, they're known for being badass warriors. They're actually known for 3 things through history. First off is being great warriors. Secondly, also very wealthy. They were an incredibly wealthy society, which explains probably why they became great warriors. But also there's a third thing that I think contributes to it just as much, which is that they had an incredible sense of humor. They were known throughout the Greek world for having great senses of humor. And their kind of humor was what today we call laconic humor, which is because they're from Laconia. It's to respond in banter back and forth with as short and pithy of a sentence as possible. So rather than having like a long comeback to somebody, being able to come back with very short sentences, very short and cutting, very direct, efficient. And so I don't remember how it came up yesterday, but I was talking about this, and I was reminded. So Philip II of Macedon, he was Alexander the Great's father. He was going to invade, and so he sent them this message, which is essentially his terms of surrender. The Spartans essentially sent back and said, nah, not interested. So I actually wrote up here on the board. So Philip's response to them was this: now look, if I win this war, you will be slaves forever. You are advised to submit without further delay. For if I bring my armies into your land, I will destroy your farms, slay your people, and level your city. And the Spartans responded back with one word: if. That's funny. If you don't do this, I'm going to do that. Okay, if. Are you necessarily going to grow from suffering? Not necessarily. But if you use it for something positive, that's why I was asking that question about whether you have to suffer to become successful. Probably, and that's a hard question to answer, because it's kind of like, can you imagine life without any suffering? Even if you think, like, I can imagine life without, like, if I had everything in life, you would still find stuff to suffer over. I mean, look at what we suffer over right now. I hate onions on cheeseburgers. Anybody else not like onions on your cheeseburger? You ever go to McDonald's and you get onions on your cheeseburger? And you're like, they gave me too much food. And we're pissed about having too much food. I get it, you can pick it off, whatever, but think about how bad of a day that creates for us, how it ruins our whole meal because they put onions on our cheeseburger. And I imagine there are people all around the world like, you can eat those onions? They're starving, they would gladly take your onions. You know? Or was it, a friend of mine, one time I remember she got angry because she got a glass of water at a restaurant. She asked for light ice, and they gave her too much ice. There's too much water in your water. You know, I said, just wait like 5 minutes. You'll have light ice. Just relax. And she gets so mad about that. You know, and so if you don't suffer much, at least if you don't suffer deeply, I guess I would say, the little things that you do encounter, which most of us would probably just call hassles or inconveniences, those become massive like points of suffering for you. So all of us suffer to some degree or another. And yet, some of us grow from it and others don't. So asking you, like, do you have to suffer to become successful? That's hard to answer because it seems like everybody suffers. So that's maybe one precondition. But it's that it's that adaptation. If we're able to adapt and use this suffering in a positive way, then yeah, probably. But it's that big if, because like I always go back to Nietzsche, who says, you know, what doesn't kill me makes me stronger. But as I say, he's very specific about that. What doesn't kill him makes him stronger. But that isn't true for a lot of people. It makes us, I don't know, tougher. I don't know if that's the same as stronger. In other words, it just kind of puts us in this world where we get battered around a lot and we manage to survive. But I don't know that strength is just surviving. Strength is probably measured by thriving. It's adapting and becoming better. It isn't just like holding your breath and taking the blows. It's actually being able to fight back and overcome. This is probably a better measurement of strength. And so if you can take the suffering, if you can make it better, if you can make your life better through it, then yeah, because you have to be able to overcome. Because whatever great thing that you want to do in your life, yeah, you're having to battle against yourself, but you're also battling against other people, which means that there's going to be a back and forth. You know, it's like if you're a football player and you want to be great and you're battling against somebody else on the field, they're going to hit you, you're going to hit them. You're not getting out of it unscathed. And even if you do hit them, it's still going to cost you. It's still going to hurt you a little bit probably, if not now, after the game. And so there's no getting out of that contest unscathed. There's no getting out of a football game unbruised. But do you overcome the bruising better than the other person? Do you overcome it better than? Do you overcome the suffering better than them? And a lot of times that's what it comes down to. You know, like when you watch, like you see boxers, a lot of times it just comes down to who's in better condition, who's in better shape. Oh, heck, sometimes you see fights out here when they both stay standing, that it's about who is able to just breathe 30 seconds into it, because they get gassed and then you can't really move, and so it's just a matter of who has better cardio, who can survive it better, who can thrive through it better. And so a lot of times life is like that too. Who can get through the pain and suffering, because you're going to experience it. But who's going to take it and make it into something useful? Because how do you get stronger? By overcoming. And how do you get stronger? By overcoming. The big challenges of your life, you probably haven't faced them yet, which is good, because we're probably not ready for them yet. Hopefully you're going to face them when you are ready. That's why if you're a boxer, your first fight is not against the champion. Not just because you haven't proved yourself, but because you're not ready. When you finally get ready, you learn throughout multiple fights, lots and lots of fights, how how to get better, and hopefully by the time you get that opportunity, you're ready for it. Well, the same is true like with school. If you were dropped into your senior year of college when you were a freshman in high school, you shouldn't be ready for it. You should have to go through a lot of schooling to get there, and not just because you're learning things, but also because you're learning things. You're learning how to study. You're learning how to sit through an exam that takes 2 hours. You're learning how to do all of the little things that don't seem like they really contribute academically, but of course, when you get to that point, you'll realize that they do. A lot of it is, for example, is not just intelligence. One of the reasons that I talk to you guys for as long as I talk to you, and I try to keep track on the camera to be between 12 and 15 minutes, because you can be as smart as possible, but if you can't focus and listen to someone for 12 to 15 minutes, even 20 minutes, you're going to struggle in college. Because your professor will go up there and will talk to you, and sometimes talk to you for an hour, literally, and then give you a 15-minute break, and then come back and talk to you for another hour. Just 2 hours of just sitting there and listening. And if you struggle to focus on that, even if you're smart, you still won't get through the process. Because the ability to sit and listen and process while you're doing that, take notes as they talk, so that way you interact with them without saying things, or even asking a lot of questions, that's all part of that process of building up to it. This is just one little, 12 to 15 minutes here is just one little step towards building all that resilience. And that's the word for it, by the way, resilience. The ability to persevere, to keep going, to be resilient, to not give up, to find yourself sometimes, by the way, doing one of these. Let me refocus myself, because that will happen too. And of course, that's intuitive. Like, really think about it. Like, what great thing can you accomplish with a 6-minute attention span? It doesn't exist. The great thing doesn't exist. You could, pay an online bill or something like that in 6 minutes, but not develop something really, really, really great. So he says that these things are inevitable. Pain and suffering, they're inevitable for, specifically, a large intelligence. And that was something that strikes me with Dostoevsky. So then is he suggesting then that if you have low intelligence, you don't suffer as much? Kind of. You kind of realize it. You just don't realize it. I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it in a way that's not going to offend some people, but understand what I mean when I say it. You go into the new building, and you got the kids in like the not like the severe classes, I don't know what they call them anymore, but the kids in like the wheelchair with the helmet and everything. These kids, do they look miserable to you? They look like they're just like happy, enjoying life, man. And that's a big part of it, because they just don't know what the hell's going on around them. They don't know what the hell's going on in the world. They don't know what effort is being put into helping them. And so they just kind of go through life happy. And it's funny, because if that's the case, I don't know, who'd you rather be? Yourself right now, completely aware of all the problems and the miseries of life, or would you rather be one of them? Would you switch places with them? People say, I don't know if any of you have ever been this person, but you look at your dog and your dog looks happy and you're like, man, I wish I could be like my dog. I'm just happy all the time. I don't know. You almost kind of wonder what level of happiness you could possibly have if you aren't aware. Yeah. Now here's the trip. And you guys have dogs? Your dogs get excited when you get home, tail's going nuts. Do you know why? There's a chemical being released in their brain. We have the same chemical in our brain. It's a chemical in your brain that gets released when you fall in love. When your dogs go nuts like that, that's what's happening in their brains. That chemical is being released, which means every time they see you and they go nuts and they get excited, they're falling in love with you again. That's a trip. So when you get home, your dog's like, oh, he's all excited to see you. Don't be that person like, oh, later. And then they're like, yeah, they love you. And as I say, if you want a friend, just feed an animal. Why does your dog love you? They might say, well, they just love you because you feed them. Haven't you guys seen homeless people walking around with dogs? That's beautiful, man. I don't know what it is. Every time I see that just like gets to me. Like, a homeless person, there and their dog they're like all proudly, like, posted up like, this is my owner. You know, like, does he feed you? Sometimes, but he is my, but I, you know, and then you realize, by the way, this guy doesn't have a lot of food, obviously, and yet some of the food he gets, he gives to his dog. He sacrifices a little bit of himself for that dog. And there's just something beautiful about that, man. I don't know, I wonder if he gives the dog some of his alcohol too. He's chopping up his Coke, his crack, he's like, yes, I will take something beautiful and just smash it. Yeah, so really great people are going to have sadness because they're going to become aware of it. You know, if you find yourself just like, you know, I guess I'll just leave it at that. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques? Yeah.